Hello, and welcome to M&A Access, your source for middle market news. In today's episode, we'll bring you critical insights from Louis de la Prida, Managing Director of NYBB Group, and Christine Hollinden, founder of Hollinden Marketers Strategists. But first, here's the news. The Federal Reserve just released initial details on the Main Street Lending Program, designed to inject liquidity to middle market businesses. The program is designed to support lending to small to medium-sized businesses that were in good financial standing before the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses are eligible for the loan if they have no more than 10,000 employees or $2.5 billion in 2019 annual revenue. The loans will have a 4-year maturity, and principal and interest payments on the loans will be deferred for 1 year. Businesses can still apply for a Main Street loan even if they've already applied for the Paycheck Protection Loan. Eligible banks may originate the Main Street loans or use the Main Street loan to increase the size of existing loans to businesses. Global Data, a data analytics and consulting firm monitoring M&A transaction activity, just reported that despite the overall decline, Asia-Pacific bound total deal volume increased by 3.43% in Q1 of 2020. In terms of value, JP Morgan advised $20.1 billion worth of deals in the first quarter of 2020. Back at home, Global Data reports that many businesses may be struggling or relying on government support to survive. Others, however, may have seen a sharp increase in demand for their products and services, and they may be navigating how to best move forward to grow in the coming months. And now we'll go to Kat Hoke for our first interview. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lou. How are you?
Good, Kat. Thank you for having me, and I hope that you, your family, and everyone at the AMMA are doing well.
You are currently centered in Long Island, which has one of the largest lower to middle markets in the country. In a snapshot, what are you seeing on the current state on both the buy and sell side?
So as you can imagine, activity has been down significantly over the last couple of weeks. On the buyer front, we're seeing that financial sponsors, in particular private equity groups and family offices, are mainly focused on helping their operating companies survive. So they've been doing things such as drawing on credit lines, assessing their cash flow needs, and communicating with lenders and operators in their portfolio. They do continue to look, but they're not necessarily submitting LOIs or IOIs. If there is one bright spot for us, though, on the buyer front, it has been search funds, which continue to actively look at our deals and seem to be positioning themselves for what many expect to be a buyer's market. The biggest concern today for buyers are three things. First, there's concern about whether financing will be available. Secondly, they're concerned about how long the crisis will last, and it's anyone's guess at this point. And thirdly, they're wondering how the crisis will impact the net cash flows and the valuations of the different companies that they're looking at. Sellers, meanwhile, seem to be in a state of shock, with most having switched into what I would call survival mode. And many of them are just simply at this point just trying to stay afloat. Sellers are concerned about their health and that of their employees for their jobs, and their personal and business finances. Most don't seem to be worried about M&A at this point, frankly, and in fact, many deals have been put on hold. We do have a few deals that were in the pipeline that have continued to move forward, but those deals tend to especially be in essential business categories. So for example, we have a couple of companies that are in due diligence. One is a food distributor and one is an HVAC company, and we are representing those companies, and those continue to garner buyer interest, those categories, and those two particular deals continue to move forward. If there's a silver lining for both buyers and sellers in our market here in Long Island, it's that the Long Island region is a profitable area of the country with many older buyers, and our expectation is that there will be a good amount of activity once the economy recovers, possibly in the third or fourth quarter of this year.
Due to COVID-19, many have effectively pushed pause on their daily operations and transactions. What should M&A professionals be focused on during this time to set themselves up for success when the pandemic subsides?
So we believe that this is an ideal time to serve. As certified M&A advisors and as members of the Alliance of Merger and Acquisitions Advisors, we're taught to do three things: to educate our clients, to collaborate with other advisors and buyers, and to never stop learning. And so we think that these three AMMA ideals offer a good path forward for everyone. So we're encouraging our intermediaries to call clients, to offer to help them at no charge, to serve as a resource on business matters, not just M&A matters, and to refer them to other advisors when needed. Most of all, though, we think that this is a great opportunity to actually listen to your client. They're going through a very, very tough time, and they probably could use a friend, for lack of a better word. We also encourage everyone to continue to build their expertise by not only building a broad M&A advisory team, but to also continue to get educated and do things such as bone up on the different SBA programs that are out there. Valuations are likely to be impacted in the future, so it's good if you're not an expert in valuations to listen to a couple of seminars to learn what's going on in that area, and just in general to try to become an expert in issues that are important to market participants. Most of all, though, we think it's important to actually share that expertise by either writing articles or newsletters, producing webinars, and using any other online methods in this time when it's very difficult to actually meet face-to-face with people. And lastly, we think that M&A firms should become their own client. And what I mean by that is that we're all business owners. And so you should pay attention to the key things that you're advising your clients and other business owners to do. And those are to pay attention to cash flow, to focus on your staff during this critical time, and to focus on your families and on your health.
Well, thank you for that, Lou. It was an honor having you on M&A Access, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Christine.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
With clients across the M&A industry, are there any small pivots you're suggesting that can have a big difference in trying to survive the COVID-19 downturn?
One pivot in general that I think is important is to think from both perspectives. You have to think about your own perspective, yours as a firm, your organization's perspective, what you're trying to accomplish, as well as the perspective of your prospect and your client. And I think that's even more important these days with the level of stress that's happening in our environment, both economically, all of the work safe, stay at home orders that are in effect. Everyone I've spoken to in the M&A industry and in the financial industry in general is seeing a slowdown in terms of deals and deal flow. You know, even those opportunities that were right there seem to have stalled. Another thing that I'm seeing is that companies are really pulling back in terms of expenditures, and in some instances are simply fighting to keep the doors open. And I think that's one of the shifts or pivots that people need to keep in mind who are in the M&A industry, is what's happening in their prospects and clients' environment. What's really keeping them up at night? I was talking to one client earlier this morning, and we were talking about his clients. And his clients are all about liquidity. Like, their number one concern is not just liquidity in general, but immediate liquidity. What do they need to do? And we talked about several different ways where we had data, our clients had data to share that could be very helpful. They have useful tools, they have expertise to bring to bear that could help address that issue of the day. And that's, more importantly, that's the pivot I think people in the M&A industry need to make, is really take a step back and think not about what am I trying to accomplish here, what am I trying to do from my firm's perspective, but what are the issues, and it may just be a handful, it may be one, that are really keeping my clients and prospects up at night. What are they worried about today?
Thank you so much for joining us today, Christine, and sharing your unique insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Louis and Christine. Be sure to join us next Wednesday as we'll be speaking with Nancy Stone, founder of Stone Strategic Management, and Taylor Devine, founder and managing partner of the CDI Group. That concludes this week's M&A Access. Until next time, be well.